Gamaya Tamasoma Jyotirgamaya Mrityurma Amritam Gamaya. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om, lead us from the unreal to the real. Lead us from darkness unto light. Lead us from death to immortality. Om, peace, peace, peace. Namaste to all of you. Thank you for having me here. Respected Dean, members of the faculty, staff members, members of families living on campus. I heard some people from NICER also here. And dear friends, fellow students, dear friends. So this is being recorded. Actually, I wanted to start with a story, but I don't think we should put it on the ticket. Let it be recorded. We'll see. So the subject is mind and consciousness, a Vedantic perspective. I had a very nice experience a few weeks ago. You can all hear me at the back? So I had a very nice experience a few weeks ago. I was invited to a very interesting conference. The conference was called, if you talk, if others can hear you, I can hear you also. Okay. So the conference was towards a new theory of consciousness. And this was organized by a very interesting man. His name is Nicholas Berggren. If you Google him, you'll find him. If you Google homeless billionaire. So at one time he was homeless. He's not homeless anymore. One time he was homeless. Why was he homeless? Because he had sold off all his homes and used to live on his private jet. That's why. But now he has homes. But he's also known as the philosopher billionaire. And he has a Berggren Institute which has a lot of interest in research into consciousness studies. So he organized a conference in Venice. And we had a stellar cast of participants. I was really enriched by that discussion, by that 5 days. Swami Vivekananda said, I'm firmly convinced, even when the child is prattling, is talking the highest philosophy, but we can't understand it. So it was a stellar cast of people. I'll tell you some of the people who were there. One of the leading neuroscientists of the world, Christoph Koch, he was there. The philosopher David Chalmers, who coined the term hard problem of consciousness, he was there from NYU. We had Dr. Anil Seth from the University of Sussex. Then we had Google's head of quantum computing. We had Google's head of AI research. Gemini AI, Google's, the guy who was in charge of that, he was there. Like this, leading quantum theorist of one of the leading quantum theorists of the world, Carlo Rovelli, Italian, he was there. So this was sort of the lineup. And the discussion was wonderful. For 4 or 5 days, I got to interact with these very bright minds. But I had a question. The question was that it's a scientific conference. Now suppose the conference was on, say, the kidney. You have AIMS, Bhubaneswar here. If you have a conference on the kidney or the liver, for that conference, who will you invite? Whom will you invite? Who will participate in such a conference on liver or kidney? Only doctors? Only medical researchers? That too super specialized in that area only? Will you ever invite a philosopher to kidney conference? You'll never invite. Will you ever invite a quantum theory guy to kidney conference? You'll never invite. Will you invite a monk for kidney conference? You'll never invite. Why? The reason is that area is already well developed and well understood. And there are people who have specialized in that area. It's a well understood, well researched body of knowledge. And so you have only people who are recognized authorities in that area. Why will you call anybody else? Then my point, which I said there was, here we are talking about consciousness, and we generally think that consciousness is a product of the brain. But why in that case are you not just calling neuroscientists? Why are you calling philosophers? Why are you calling quantum theorists? Why are you calling quantum computing people? Why are you calling AI people? Why are you calling a monk? The reason is this: the field of consciousness studies is not mature. We do not have even a clue as to what's going on. Generally we think, brain is there, somehow brain is producing consciousness and that's it. We don't look deeper. But then comes David Chalmers, who's a philosopher in the Mind Brain Consciousness unit in NYU. And about 30 years ago, he coined this phrase, the hard problem of consciousness. If you Google it, it's one of the leading problems in science today. Hard problem of consciousness. What does he mean by the hard problem of consciousness? He says to distinguish it from the so-called easy problems of consciousness. Easy problems are not easy. Those who work in the field, it's a very hard problem. But to distinguish it, we have conscious experiences. And when we have these experiences, there is something going on in our brains. And these days, neuroscientists, I'm given to understand, they correlate. So whatever experience we are having, they will map what's going on in our brain, which parts are firing. They have fMRI scanning or something like that, and they will make correlations. So it's a science of correlations. If you have a pain in the arm, which part of your brain is lit up? If somebody has amnesia, which part of the brain is not functioning properly? So they can correlate. But correlation is not causation. David Chalmers makes this case. How is it that neuronal activity, faint electrical activity in the brain can produce our conscious experience? See, we are seeing, we are hearing, smelling, tasting, touching. We have pain, we have pleasure, we have the taste of, when you drink coffee, you have the taste, the flavor of the coffee, the warmth of the coffee. So these experiences, these subjective experiences, these first-person experiences, what is the connection between these and tiny electrical activity in the brain? There is, David Chalmers says, there is an explanatory gap. There is a jump. How can little electrical activity be the color of a flower, be the feeling of sublimity in a song, be the creativity in a poet? How? There is a gap. More particularly in philosophy, this is called a category error. The activity in the brain is objective. You can scan it, you can objectify it, you can know it. But one object can produce another object. How can an object produce the subject? You see, you can trace whatever is happening in the body, in the nerves, in the neurons, in the brain, and from there to suddenly feeling, inner feeling, subjective feeling, first person experience. How? Another example which I give, if you go to a factory, say a car producing factory, then you see all the parts coming into the assembly line and they're being put together. At each stage of the car, you can see the car coming together. And at the end, the car is being driven off. Every stage is observable and demonstrable. But when it comes to consciousness, suppose you say brain produces consciousness. Alright, all the processes in the brain, as far as we can see, they are scannable, demonstrable to some extent. But then suddenly there is a jump. We have first person experience, subjective experience, pain, pleasure, joy, science, spirituality, all of that. How? There is a gap. I remember seeing this cartoon. Some PhD student is presenting his dissertation to his guides. And in the cartoon there was step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4. Step 1, mathematics, equations. Step 2, equations. Step 4, equations. Step 3, it is written, a miracle. A miracle. And the guide is telling the student, I think you need to work on step 3. Our understanding of consciousness is like that. That there is a big gap in our understanding of consciousness. Brain produces consciousness is becoming more and more of a big question mark. Because we are unable to explain how it produces consciousness. That there is some correlation, there is no doubt about it. But how does that activity in the brain suddenly produce? Now look at it another way, which David Chalmers explains. All objects in this universe have only one dimension, that is what you see and what the external physical dimension, except including all organs in the body. But now you are claiming there is one organ in the body, the brain, which has two dimensions, which is the external, the physical side of it, and a mysterious, almost magical internal subjective realm. How it feels from the within. How strange is that? Why should only the brain have such a thing? So reducing consciousness to brain activity, this is a big question mark has come on this. 1998-99, there was a debate between David Chalmers and Christoph Koch, who is a leading neuroscientist. He was the chief neuroscientist for the Paul Allen Brain Institute. Now he lives in Seattle. So there was a debate, 1999 I think, in New York University. And Christoph Koch challenged David Chalmers. Brain produces consciousness and we will demonstrate it. Give us 25 years more. The way neuroscience is progressing, within 25 years we will have a clear explanation how the brain is producing consciousness. This is called promissory materialism. I can't explain it on a material basis, but I promise, give us time, we will explain it. 25 years passed. Last year, they had forgotten. Both David Chalmers and Christoph Koch had forgotten. And the bet was that if I can demonstrate, the one who wins will get a case of champagne or something like that they will get. David Chalmers said in 1998-99, impossible, you can't do it because it's impossible in principle. I'm not bothered about your scientific, the scientific side of it, technical side of it. It's impossible in principle. How will you do it? 2024, somebody reminded, guys, 25 years have passed, so what's the verdict? And they had another debate. I missed it, I was busy elsewhere, but I really wanted to go. They had a debate, and in which at the very beginning, it was I later read in the news, Christoph Koch automatically, immediately, at the very beginning, he spontaneously admitted, we have not been able to explain. Neuroscience has advanced a lot in these last 25 years. We have not been able to explain how brain produces consciousness. We have made no progress at all. And he gave, I think, a case of champagne or something to David Chalmers. Interesting, in this conference, I met that neuroscientist, Christoph Koch. And he told me that until recently, I was a committed materialist as far as brain, mind, consciousness are concerned, but no more. Not that he's accepting the Vedantic perspective or Buddhist perspective or any Eastern perspective, but he's open to it now. He's open to it. If we see theories of consciousness, what is this consciousness? If you go to YouTube, don't go now, if you go to YouTube later on and search 325 theories, 325 theories, you just search that much, a talk will come up. There's one, Robert Lawrence Kuhn. He's been running a podcast, some of you might have seen it, Closer to Truth. Closer to Truth. So he is very interested in science and he's been interviewing physicists, he's been interviewing biologists, he's been interviewing computer scientists, philosophers about consciousness and some other issues also. And he says in his interviews over the years and decades, he has classified how many answers to this question he has received, he has come across. And his classification of the theories of consciousness. What is consciousness? What causes consciousness? He says he has identified 325 theories. 325 theories. Some are modern, some are older, some are ancient. And in that, there's an interview that if you search on YouTube, you will find 325 theories. There's an interview with, nearly 3-hour long interview with Robert Lawrence Kuhn. And there he says, one of the first and most sophisticated theories of consciousness we have got among all those 325 is the Indian Advaita Vedanta theory of consciousness. More about that later. He says in the interview, if you have 325 theories of something, that's another way of saying, I don't know. In science, you make progress if you have one or two contending theories. And finally, when you settle on one theory, which can be revised later on, but if you settle on one theory, now you say it can go into textbooks and all. It's now we know. In a scientific sense, we know. If you have one theory which is agreed upon, peer-reviewed, agreed upon that this is the explanation of this phenomenon. If you have 325 theories, that means we have literally no idea what's going on there. We will take a look at an Indian perspective on it, an ancient Indian perspective on it. This question of what is consciousness, this first person experience, it's not a new question. It was asked in ancient India. Swami Vivekananda says, each generation must ask these questions for itself. Why? Because we will ask it in a new way. And he says, not that the answers were not found. Answers were found. Back in the Upanishads, the answers were found. But as the centuries roll down, the answers are gathering strength. You're getting newer and richer dimensions of that answer. What I mean by that, in the Upanishads we will see, there are theories of consciousness in the Upanishads. Over the time, centuries, when the age of philosophy came, darshana, the same theories were developed into philosophical structures, supported by logic, evidence and all. And today when we come down to this day and age, now we are raising questions of what is the connection between quantum mechanics and consciousness? What is the connection between, what questions about consciousness does AI raise? So these are new ways of looking at the same phenomenon, same thing, consciousness. And so the answer, we may have that ancient answer, but it does not mean that, someone might say, it is all solved. Advaita Vedanta, Upanishads, thousands of years ago, why again raise all these issues? No. The answer that we will get today, we are children of this age, 20th century, 21st century, children of science. This is an institute of science. We must understand it in the language which we are used to, in the methodology which we are used to. So it is worth asking those questions, worth investigating it, and worth rediscovering those old answers in a new way, in our day and age. There is a book, Waking, Dreaming, Being, by Professor Evan Thompson, the University of British Columbia in Vancouver. He writes in the beginning of the book that consciousness studies is not a new subject. It is as ancient as these texts called the Upanishads in the Indo-Gangetic plains, which were composed at that time, thousands of years ago. These questions were raised at that time. And he goes on to say something which I am a Vedantic monk, so Upanishads are my fundamental texts, but I will not dare to say such things. He is saying it. He is saying in that book, Awaking, Dreaming, Being, these Upanishads are so significant in the history of human thought that our history should be dated not AD and BC, but before Upanishad and after Upanishad. It's not practically possible because Upanishad doesn't have a particular date, but anyway, the principle is understood. We ourselves will be shy of saying such things, and I will say that jab sahab bole hain tab to theek hai. If a white person says it, it's fine. Yes, indeed, if we go back to the Upanishads, you find these questions. One of the Upanishads is called the Kena Upanishad. Just look at the question, the quality of the question, and it's literally 3,000-4,000 years ago. I will chant the Sanskrit first. It's nice to hear the sound of that original language, and then I'll translate. Kene shitam pachati preshitam mana, kene shitam vachamimam vadanti, kene shitam chakshu shrotram kaudeva yunakti. He says, how do I get these thoughts in my mind? How do I get, these thoughts are coming in my mind, how am I experiencing thinking? How am I experiencing this seeing? I'm seeing right now, how? And hearing, how? And speaking. So all of these activities, how these experiences, these conscious experiences, the words are very interesting. Kaudeva yunakti. So which, Deva means literally in Sanskrit bright being. He is referring to consciousness. Which bright being inspires, illumines these experiences of thinking, of speaking, of seeing, of hearing? One of the professors of philosophy whom I follow a lot, Professor Arindam Chakraborty. He is now teaching at Ashoka University, but earlier he was at Hawaii for many years. So he said to me, Swami, stay with the question. When we hear such wonderful questions, we are eager to find out the answer. Arjuna asked questions to Krishna and we want to know. Yes, the little boy Nachiketa asked question to Yamaraj. What happens after death? We want to know. Yes, let's quickly flip the pages, go to the answer. He says, don't rush for the answer. Stay with the question. Let the question vibrate in you. Let it become your question. Look at the brilliance of this question. I'll point out why it is so interesting. Suppose you say, how do I see? The straight answer will be with your eyes. If you want to know how, you want more details, whole ophthalmology department, AIM sits there, go. And they will explain it to you. Books and books are written on it. But it's not a question of ophthalmology. How do I think? It's a psychology. Go to the psychology department. No, it's not a question of psychology. Notice, the student is asking, what is that one thing which enables me to have the experience of seeing, experience of hearing, experience of speaking, experience of even breathing in and breathing out, all of those things. That means he's not asking a physiological question. Because if you're asking, how do I see and how do I hear, there will be two different questions, two different departments, two different shelves of books. But he's asking, what is that one thing? Kau deva yanakti, singular. He's asking about consciousness. He's not asking about the physiology of seeing or hearing. He's not asking about the psychology of thinking. He's not asking about how the voice box and the lungs and the tongue functions, how he can speak. Not that. So it's a question not about the body. It's not a question not about the mind. It's a question about consciousness itself. Remarkable, remarkable question. What was the answer? The answer is equally interesting. If you go back to the Kena Upanishad, I will tell you the original Sanskrit and then I will translate. Shrotrasya shrotram manaso mano yad vachoha vacham sau pranasya prana chakshushas chakshur atimuchya dhira pretya smad lokadamrita bhavanti. It says that the teacher replies, a very interesting language, direct answer to the question, but very interesting language. He says, it is the, you want to know how you hear? Yes. It is the ear of the ear. You want to know how you see? By the eye of the eye. You want to know how you think? By the mind of the mind. How you speak? By this time the student, clever enough, you would have said, by the tongue of the tongue? Yes, you are right. And if one realizes this thing, again singular, the eye of, which is the eye of the eye, which is the ear of the ear, the mind of the mind, the speech of the speech, it's the same thing. Only one thing is talking about. And if you realize what that is, you will transcend the body-mind and attain to supreme freedom. Atimuchya dhira pretya asmad loka damrita bhavanti. This is the goal of human life, transcending suffering, attaining fulfillment, if you know this consciousness for what it truly is. So a remarkable statement, one single sentence. He's pointing out the nature of consciousness, and he is pointing out how do you realize that, what do you do with this, and what will be the result of that. Extremely subtle and extremely wonderful philosophy is involved here. Let's delve a little more into this, then I'll expand, go into the bigger picture. Why is he using such language? Ear of the ear, eye of the eye, mind of the mind, speech of the speech. Let us notice three aspects to this language, ear of the ear, eye of the eye, and so on. Notice that when you say, how do you hear? Ear of the ear. You are making a distinction there. If the teacher had said, how do I hear? The teacher had said, by your ears. That would have been a physiological question. You have to go to the ENT doctor, he'll explain how do you hear. But he's saying not ear. His answer was not the ear. He says ear of the ear. That means there is something which is distinct from the ears. There is something which is distinct and apart from the eyes and the mind and the speech. And so all our physiological and psychological functions, there is something distinct from all of this which gives you the experience that all of these are giving you. So first, ear of the ear, eye of the eye means that consciousness is distinct from the ears, eyes, mind. It's something separate. But also, second, it is there itself. He could have said it is something entirely separate from the ear, but he is using the same language. Ear of the ear, eye of the eye, mind of the mind. Means it's something distinct from the ears and the eyes and the mind, but present in the ears, eyes, mind, right there, pervading that system, body-mind system. distinct from your physiology, distinct from your psychology, but pervading your physiology and psychology. And third, singular. Instead of saying that's a separate question, ears, the separate question, mind, there's a separate question, eyes. He's saying, no, he agrees, there is one entity behind all of this. So three things we have already got from this language, ear of the ear, eye of the eye. That what you are asking about is distinct from the body, the physiology, or the psychology, distinct from the mind. Second, it is present in the body-mind. And third, it is one. These are all important. They are highly debated. I'll just give you how each of these can be debated, how each of these you can push back against it. There was this professor of mathematics, I think, Marvin Minsky. He's passed away now. And he has said, there is no problem, just the opposite view. What I'm telling you, just the opposite view. There is no problem of consciousness. There is a problem of how we see, how we think, how we enjoy or suffer. And these are all different problems because we don't know the answer. We have put it under one basket and we are calling it consciousness. That's the view of Marvin Minsky. And this ancient text is actually pushing back against Marvin Minsky, saying that no, it is the same problem. All of these are first-person subjective inner experiences, and they're caused by one thing. Consciousness, of course, but he's not using the word consciousness. He's using the word ear of the ear, eye of the eye. One good way I have of understanding this, an example which I can use, I like this example. Here is the light. If I ask, how is the light shining? This fan, how does it go round and round? This microphone, how does it amplify sound? When these were in the shops, projector, how is it projecting images? When these were in the shops, they didn't do anything like that. What is that one thing which got into all of them and they're making them do what they're designed to do? You'll immediately say, it's electricity. So the Upanishadic teacher would have said, it is the mic of the mic, it is the fan of the fan, it is the projector of the projector. It is one entity which is distinct from all of these, but it gets into them and makes them do what they were designed to do. It's an example. It's not a precise, good example, but it will serve its purpose. It shows the three aspects I just spoke about. Distinct from the eyes, ears, mind, speech. 1. 2. Pervading the body-mind system. 3. 1. One entity behind these diverse systems. Similarly, electricity is like that, distinct from all these gadgets, but pervading these gadgets and one entity making them do diverse things. So this is the idea of consciousness which is they are putting forward. Let me just zoom back a little, step away from the Kena Upanishad, go back into the bigger picture. We started with the question, what explains consciousness? How is consciousness caused or produced? Take a look at it from the perspective of Indian philosophy. I will give you 5 options. There are many options. By the way, when I speak like this, I am not speaking in a triumphalist way that Indian philosophy 5,000 years ago solved all the problems of consciousness. No, I am not going to do that. Because if you had done that, there would have been one theory. But is there one theory in Indian philosophy for consciousness? No. There are many theories. But what I feel is, why I am talking about this in connection with modern consciousness studies is, I think what the ancient Indians discovered, what is there in our text, has something very valuable to contribute to the present debate. That much. That's my minimal suggestion. And I found it to be true. In that conference I was speaking about, they were very interested. David Chalmers was interested. Christoph Koch was interested. The AI guy was interested. The one who's behind Gemini AI now. So they're all very interested. They're very open to it. They wanted to know more and wanted to know how we can map it onto our present understanding or lack of understanding of consciousness and what it means for AI, for quantum theory, for things like, it sounds like science fiction. How can you upload a human into the cloud? So, converted human being into data. It was a theoretical question posed to us. What would constitute a successful upload, theoretically speaking? So all these, they're open to it. They're very interested in such things. And I think we can bring it into dialogue. Some people are trying to do that. Alright, what am I going to do now? Big picture. Some different varieties, spices, masala of different kinds of theories of consciousness from Indian philosophy, and then I'll come to this one, the Advaitic answer, what Advaita says about consciousness. So, one answer could be, what is the question we are asking? What is the connection between consciousness and object, between subject and object, consciousness and matter? One answer could be, matter, the object, matter produces consciousness. The object produces the subject. The fundamental thing is matter. And consciousness is a byproduct, epiphenomenon. Who says that? Modern Charvakas, the ancient Charvakas say it. Modern materialists, reductive materialists, most of them say it. Ultimately, everything has to be grounded in matter. No matter what you are finding, I'm using the word matter. No matter. In a philosophy class, they have this old joke. It's a cheap joke. What is matter? Never mind. What is mind? No matter. And ultimately, whatever your fantasy theory about consciousness, you have to ground it in matter. It has to be brought down to brain and living body and particles, molecules, atoms, and down to whatever quarks, superstrings, whatnot. It ultimately has to ground in matter, is it not? So this is the idea from the materialist perspective. That matter organized somehow into living beings, organized it further into nervous systems and brains, somehow producing consciousness. That's a higher end thing. Fundamental is matter. Matter, energy, time, space, that's fundamental. Who says this? The Charvaka. The Charvaka had a very nice thing which we might have designed it here in Odisha itself. It's a very local example. He said, when you eat a pan, when you eat a pan, there is no red color in the pan, but you chew it, your lips and your tongue will become red. Similarly, the 5 elements, Akasha, Vayu, Agni, Prithvi, Jala, when they mix in this body, there is no consciousness in them. But when they mix in the right proportion, consciousness is generated. So this is a very, in principle, we have not advanced even 1 inch beyond that. Many of those 325 theories, they are basically variants of this theory. Somehow the brain is producing consciousness. Somehow, we don't know how. What's wrong with this? Why not say, okay, this is fine, stop here. Why think about any other theory? What's wrong with this is the hard problem of consciousness. David Chalmers started with that. How does this material conglomeration, how does it produce? Material reactions can produce another kind of matter. Material properties, material output. How can it produce the immaterial? How can it produce the subject? How can it produce conscious experiences? That explanatory gap, which is why after 25 years also, Christoph Koch says, we have not made any progress towards. We have progressed a lot in neuroscience, but how brain produces consciousness, if at all, no progress at all. So the single objection to this materialist approach is hard problem of consciousness. If you Google that, you will find a huge debate is going on, hard problem of consciousness. And there are different sides to it. So, at the very least, even if you are a committed materialist, reductionist, you will have to admit it's not a closed question. Even the leading experts in neuroscience and in philosophy, they are saying that this is no explanation. We don't have any explanation here at all. And about matter, I'll tell you something interesting. I told you this guy was there, the Google's head of quantum computing. He told me that once, recently, he went to no one less than Sir Roger Penrose, who got the Nobel Prize in Physics a couple of years back. And he was telling him about quantum computing, and then finally he told Sir Roger that, well, Sir Roger, ultimately everything has to be grounded in matter. He said, written in matter. All the data has to be written in matter, right? And Sir Roger, this quantum computing guy said, these exact words, smarty pants that he is, Sir Roger said to me, but I don't know what matter is. He's saying, I'm uncomfortable being called a materialist because I do not understand matter. Of course, his not understanding matter is at another level. But see, even the nature of matter is under question. There is a philosopher, Galen Strawson. You can find in New York Times, you will find there is a popular article by him, half humorous, half serious. It's called The Hard Problem of Matter. And there he says, there is no hard problem of consciousness. Rather, we have assumed brain is producing consciousness, and then we can't explain how brain is producing consciousness, and hence hard problem of consciousness. No. We are conscious. The first fact we all have is I am conscious. And then the next fact is something is presented to consciousness. Something is experienced in consciousness. My body is experienced. The world is experienced. So the question should be, what is matter? Not what is consciousness. What is object? What is matter? And he says, the more we investigate matter, the more mysterious it is becoming. So this is the first option, Charvaka option. Today what materialists say, in principle exactly same thing. The ancient Charvakas used to say, matter is producing. Panna khaile. What you get, the same example they are giving for. No, I really feel, I have a program a couple of days later, the role of Orissa and Jagannath culture in the rebuilding the future of Orissa. But I was thinking just now, I was telling sir, when I was walking through your campus, it's like a tapovan. It's a good thing that the institute has been pushed so far away from the city. You are away from most of the pollution, you are away from the noise or distraction, and you have a vast forested area, semi-forested area here. I was looking at the names, Udayagiri, Khandagiri, Ratnagiri. These are the areas in which centuries ago, in caves, in very simple dwellings, thousands of monks, Buddhists and Jains, they spent time in philosophy and meditation, and they produced the things which I am going to talk about. They are produced by these people, or at least in debate with those people, in this place itself. So why not that in the future of Orissa and the future of India, we will have this new Udayagiri Khandagiri here in the IIT Bhubaneswar. So the second option now, opposite. First option was matter produces consciousness, object produces consciousness. Reverse. Consciousness produces matter. Consciousness is producing matter. That's another option. Who says this? Every theistic religion. Those who believe in God. What is the definition of God in any religion? God is the creator. God is in Christianity, God is first thing. God is the creator of the universe. In Hinduism, Janmadhyasya yataha, in Brahma Sutra you get. This entire universe, Asya Jagata Janma Sthiti Bhanga Yasma Tad Brahma. What is Brahman? The whole universe originates from it, exists in it, and will disappear back into it. The creator of the universe. Now this creator of the universe, God, is it conscious or unconscious? Everybody will say it's conscious. Our God is a conscious God. So consciousness, in a philosophical language, consciousness creates matter. What's the problem with this approach? The problem is you can't prove it. That's the whole problem with the theistic religion. It has to be based on faith, on belief. If you try to prove it, dicey. So, in America, for example, the word for religion is faith, Vishwas. So God exists and God has created this universe. It's entirely a matter of faith. You may have the faith, I may have the faith, but if you push me, I'll have to admit I believe it. See, in all the theistic religions you will find there are philosophers and theologians who struggle to prove the existence of God. This is a perennial anxiety for those who believe in God. Maybe God doesn't exist. Maybe not. So in Christianity, I think Saint Augustine or Thomas Aquinas, 5 proofs of the existence of God. In our own, right here, in Orissa again, Udayanacharya, he was debating with the Buddhists. The Buddhists said there is no Atma, no Ishvara. Udayanacharya, he said, I want to prove that there is Ishvara. That his book is there. 9 proofs of Ishvara, existence of Ishvara. There is a very nice story about Udayanacharya. He had come to Jagannath Puri. This was 1000 years ago, or 200-300 years after Shankaracharya. He had come to Jagannath Puri, and at that time for the bhoga, the doors were closed. So then I've forgotten the shloka, but he composes a beautiful shloka to Lord Jagannath. He says, this great logician who has given 9 proofs of the existence of God. He says, when the Buddhists come and attack you, that you don't exist, You come, more Sarvapriyanandaji, to please help me to prove that I exist. So I have to give you proof. I have to give people proof that you exist. Now that when I have come to your door, you are closing your door to me. Like this. This is humorous shloka is there. So everywhere you will find, wherever there is a theistic religion, there will be anxiety that God is fine, wonderful, but only if God exists. And every religion, every civilization across history, you will find atheists, agnostics. Because it is possible to, you can believe in God, you may not believe in God, or you may believe in a different way. So, the second problem, second approach, that God has created, consciousness has created the universe, there is no way of proving this. I mean, there are proofs, but they are not satisfactory. I know of one philosopher. How did he become a philosopher? He was going to become a Christian father. He was training for a priest. When he read the proof of existence of God, he was so disappointed. So this is the standard of proof. So he decided to become philosopher, not theologian. So this is the second option, the God option. God creates the universe. Consciousness created matter. Difficult to prove. Third option, neither created the other. If you cannot reduce one entity to another, you must admit that that is the fundamental entity. This is how science progresses. And so, let us admit consciousness is a fundamental entity. Not produced, maybe working through the brain and nervous system, but not produced by the brain and nervous system. So, consciousness and matter, neither matter produces consciousness, nor consciousness produces matter. Both are fundamental entities, parallel entities, consciousness, matter, energy, time, space, all fundamental entities existing together. Who says this? Sankhya, yoga. And in modern times, even someone like David Chalmers is proposing, there's a TED talk, crazy idea. He says, well, there's a crazy idea. Maybe consciousness is a fundamental reality, a feature of the universe. Along with matter and energy and time and space, maybe consciousness exists, not in the human form, in some other form, more basal form it exists. These are called panpsychist theories. And David Chalmers espouses one modern variety of it, but these are ancient theories. And in India, the most ancient philosophies, Sankhya, Kapila Sankhya, Purusha and Prakriti, consciousness and nature. Consciousness is fundamental, nature is fundamental, and they interact. Where do they interact? In you, in me, here. Body, nature, matter. Mind, according to Sankhya, is also matter. And consciousness is the Purusha, separate. And they are interacting. You are consciousness. And your body and mind are provided to you by Prakriti, by nature. And then you become this conglomeration of consciousness and matter. Purusha and Prakriti together. And this is a very ancient, very, very ancient philosophy. What is the problem with this? Why not say consciousness is fundamental, matter is also fundamental, leave it there. The problem there is for any this is a dualistic philosophy. Okay, by the way, little fine print, detour here. When I say matter and consciousness in Vedanta, there are very fine definitions. What is matter? I will not say, never mind. What is matter? Whatever you can experience is called matter. Anything that you can label as this is matter. And that which experiences is consciousness. Now you apply it to our day-to-day experience. This, matter. Shirt, this, matter. Body, this, it is matter. And now most interestingly, thoughts. If you have thoughts in the mind, this thought, this idea, this memory, this feeling, matter, because you are labeling it as this. And the one which is experiencing it all, consciousness. And this is a Sankhyan idea we use in Vedanta, but a very neat definition. Padmapadacharya, Shankaracharya's disciple, says, Anidam Chaitanyam. Idam, object. Idam means this. Anidam, not this. So consciousness is that which objectifies everything, but itself is never objectified. That which experiences everything. And that answers to our experience. We are all experiencing like that. Anyway, back to, this is just an aside, a footnote, back to Sankhya. So why not accept the Sankhyan philosophy? Consciousness, matter, and they are interacting here. There is matter here, there is consciousness here, that's it. Don't reduce consciousness to matter, don't reduce matter to consciousness. Leave it like that. Dualism, interaction. Problem, every dualism has this problem, it's called interaction. How can two utterly different objects, two utterly different entities interact? What I mean by this, I'll give you an example. In Vedanta, we often use light as an example for consciousness. Prakasha, Jyoti. Sri Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, Jyotisham api tad jyoti tamasah paramuchyati. Grand shloka. It is the light of lights, forever beyond darkness. Jnanam geyam jnanagamyam hrivi sarvasya dishtitam. It is knowledge. It's that which makes knowledge possible. It is that which can be known. It is to be known what consciousness truly is. And it is to be attained by knowledge. And where is it found? In the hearts of all beings, or in all beings, all conscious beings. Light. We use examples of light. So light is illumining, like that consciousness is illumining the world. But that is not a good example finally, because this light is a material light. And these are material objects. The light can illuminate, they can interact. Material light can interact with material objects, why not? But according to our very definition, consciousness is not material. Then how can it interact with the material universe? I mean, a simple, crude example will be, light is illumining everything. Let the light illumine your thoughts also. It can't. The thought is not a kind of entity which the light can illumine. And these are categories, different categories. So how will consciousness interact with matter? Even in the body. How does consciousness interact with the brain and with the physical body? They are separate, entirely different, distinct. Descartes. We all read school report, Cartesian x-axis, y-axis. This is IIT, so all of you are not Oriya. How many are Oriya here? How many understand Oriya? So not all, so I will restrict my Oriya. Cartesian, x-axis, y-axis, but he was a great philosopher. And there he says, mind and body. He's the person behind the mind-body dualism in Western philosophy. So mind and body are entirely separate entities and they are interacting here. Your mind, he's not using the term consciousness, but he includes consciousness in that. See, even there, his definition of consciousness is not as analytic as the Sankhyan definition. Because for him, whatever is internal is consciousness, mind, emotion. But Sankhya goes even further. If you can experience it as this, it becomes an object. But consciousness is not an object. Anyway, Descartes takes mind, consciousness all together, bundle. And it is interacting with the body. Now he had a student, Princess Elizabeth of Bohemia. So in those days, women were not given access to education, but she was a princess. So she had access to the best teachers, including Descartes, and she would write letters, he would reply. So she read Descartes' meditations, and she wrote back to Descartes. In those days, they would write like this: "Please excuse my poor feminine intellect. I cannot understand. I'm a poor woman. So your great theories, I cannot, brilliant, and I don't remember the exact language like that. But explain to me how the mind will influence the body, which is physical. The mind is spiritual, the body is physical. How are they influencing?" And he was in trouble because he has really no answer to that. He said the infamous answer. Remember, this 300 years ago when they did not have much idea of physiology. He said it is the pineal gland. Mind is pushing the pineal gland is pushing the body. She wrote back, she's relentless, she wrote back, but pineal gland is also physical. I am sure you have got the answer, but I am a poor woman. How I don't understand this? Please explain a little more. How is the mind pushing the pineal gland? Now he is in trouble. He wrote back, no, not directly. There are vapors, gas. And the mind is he's trying to make the physical more and more rarefied so that the mind can interact. How the mind is pushing the vapor is pushing the pineal gland is pushing the body, and then you can move the body. So she understood. Ye bechara to phas gaya. So she did not write any. But that is the problem with any dualism. How do two entirely different entities interact? How do they interact? There is no answer in Sankhya. There is no answer in yoga. There is no answer in Descartes also. Dualisms will always flounder on this point. How do they interact? Then I'll come to the we have almost run out of time. I'll come to the Advaitic idea. And it's better to have question answers afterwards. I'll come to the Advaitic idea. There's one Buddhistic, for example, for a sample I would have taken one Buddhist philosophy, Vijnanavada or Shunyavada, we'll leave it aside. Now what does Advaita say about this? Shankara starts his analysis of this problem in his famous commentary to the Brahma Sutra. Professor Jain Mahanti was from Orissa, wonderful character. He passed away a few years back. Jitendranath Mahante. He was a master of Indian philosophy, master of Western philosophy too. After completing his PhD from here in Calcutta, after Second World War, at that time Germany was devastated. He went to Germany and there he studied Husserl's phenomenology and became a master of, such a great master of both streams, Indian and Western philosophy, that in later on, nowadays also, if any book is published on phenomenology, you will find at least 1 or 2 articles or references to Jain Mahante. Wonderful person. So he told me once, he says, Maharaj, in all my studies of the texts of East and the West, I have never come across a more profound sentence than the first sentence of Shankara's Adhyasa Bhashya. Yushmadaspad Pratyaya Gocharayo Vishay Vishayino, the long sentence, but there he takes up, now we'll understand, we've got the context for it now. Shankara says, consciousness and matter, they are opposite like light and darkness. They can never meet, and yet they appear to meet. Where do they appear to meet? In us, in the body. I am conscious and the body is also matter, but we are one bundle. We are interacting. How are they interacting? He is asking. Since it is impossible that they will interact, and yet they do interact in everybody, then perhaps Shankaracharya raises this question. They are not separate. They are not separate. You are saying they are absolutely distinct from each other? Maybe consciousness and matter are not two separate entities. Maybe at a more fundamental level they are one entity. Shankaracharya raises this question. Which one is fundamental? At that point the materialist will come and say, "Wahi to hum bol rahe hain. It's all matter." Shankaracharya there, he says, no, stop. Matter is secondary because it is presented to me in consciousness. Without consciousness, there is no evidence of matter. So I will take consciousness as primary and matter as an appearance of consciousness. In consciousness, matter is experienced where? Only in consciousness. You will ask, meaning outside consciousness also matter is there. That's what the way we think. So there are very interesting discussions about this. In question answer you can ask. But basically his answer and Advaita Vedanta's answer of this question of what is consciousness is the fundamental reality of the universe. And what we call the material universe is an appearance in consciousness. And it is nothing other than consciousness. Consciousness itself appearing to itself with names, forms and function is called matter. And therefore it solves the interaction problem. Because matter and consciousness are fundamentally one reality. And the fundamental one reality is consciousness, which is another name which is given is Brahman. I'll end with this observation and stop here. What Advaita Vedanta says is that, the three most fundamental questions of philosophy. In philosophy, there are three big questions. One branch of philosophy deals with what is real. What's real? Is matter real? Is mind real? Is God real? Is the universe real? Are numbers real? Is Harry Potter real? What is real? The branch which studies real existing entities is called metaphysics. Nowadays they call it ontology. Ontos, being. So ontology. One question. Second question, how do you know? If you say God exists, how do you know? If you say superstrings exist, how do you know? So, epistemology, the study of knowledge. This is the second branch of philosophy. The third and last branch is a sort of umbrella term for many things, values. What is the point of life? What is beautiful? What is right and wrong? Ethics, aesthetics, morality. All of these together, there is a term axiology, the study of values. Now this is the mainstream philosophy, the three big biggies, the three big questions in philosophy. And now see, what is the Vedanta's answer, Vedantic perspective answer to these big questions. What is existence? What is reality? The Vedantic answer is Sat, existence itself, being itself. How do we have any experience at all? How do we know? See, Kena Upanishad question, how do I see, how do I hear, how do I think? How do we know anything at all? Answer in Vedanta, consciousness, in Sanskrit, Chit. And what's the point of it all? What's the point of life? What is right, what is wrong, what is ultimately desirable, valuable? The answer in Vedanta is bliss. Ananda. And Vedanta goes further. I mean, these are such, all of these can be debated. Each of them can be a whole course in philosophy. Pros, and there are various points of view. This is one point of view I am giving you. In Indian philosophy itself, you will get so. Nayayikas will step in, objection, they will say. I have got some things to say. So anyway, but see the broad answers, the soaring, sublime answers which are given. Existence itself, it's not that only things exist. Reality is existence. That is considered as fundamental. Consciousness itself and Ananda, bliss itself. And Vedanta goes further and claims these are not three separate things. They are one thing. That which is existence is consciousness, is bliss. Sat Chit Ananda. Therefore, if consciousness is understood, the mystery of matter will also be understood. Roger Penrose says, I don't understand what matter is. I refuse to be called a materialist because I don't understand what matter is. This is Vedanta's answer. Matter and consciousness are not two different in fact, Sir Roger Penrose has a very interesting theory without any Vedanta at all. But that's why I like it. Without Vedanta, if you come to it, then it makes it stronger, that you have come to it from an entirely atheistic, rational, scientific, at least theoretical perspective. He says there are two great unsolved theoretical problems in science today. One is, I don't understand the physics of it, relating general relativity with quantum theory. Something is there, some problem to make the whole thing the grand unified theory. That is one, at the level of the very small and the very large. There is a huge discontinuity in physics, and physics are grappling with it. That problem. And on the other hand, the problem of consciousness. The hard problem of consciousness. And Sir Roger Penrose's speculation, pure speculation, that the two problems are related. Now, do you see what I mean? 1200 years ago, Shankaracharya talking about the Sankhyan problem of interaction. Consciousness and matter cannot interact, and yet they seem to interact. Yes, in that case, it's possible that there is one underlying fundamental reality. And today, when Sir Roger Penrose says, same problem of consciousness as hard problem of consciousness, same problem of matter as the incommensurability between the very small, the quantum, and the very large, relativity. How you can, accommodate, how the two can accommodate each other. One is matter, one is consciousness. Still we are in the same question, but of course in a much more sophisticated and new way. And he's saying the same thing, the two are one. That Sat is Chit, is Ananda. Existence is consciousness, is bliss. And Vedanta goes further. If you know this, the problem of human life is also solved. The great philosopher Wittgenstein, he says that when all the major problems of science have been solved, have been answered, none of the fundamental questions of life will have been answered. You may complete your scientific theories, you still have big questions. And Robert Lawrence Kuhn, that 325 theories of consciousness, he says, whatever your theory of consciousness, one thing is common to all theories, that all the big questions of our life, what happens after death? Who am I? What is morality? How will AI relate to me? It depends on your theory of consciousness. Does it not? Think about it. Whether you're materialist, Advaitic, panpsychist, Sankhyan, whatever. Your answer will depend on what theory of consciousness you have. For each of these questions about life after death, materialist will say, no chance. Panpsychist will say, always your consciousness will be there. Like this. So every question will depend on your theory of consciousness. And then Vedanta goes further. Vedanta gives answer to ontology, to epistemology, to axiology. Sat Chit Ananda. And it's the same answer to all of them. It's that one thing, Sat Chit Ananda, another name for that is Brahman. Brahma, we keep hearing the word. It's common in all Indian languages. But Sanskrit, etymologically, it just means the infinite. Brahma in Sanskrit. Brihatvat, Brinhanatvat, Atma, Brahma iti giyate. Brahma is that which expands without limit, grammatically speaking, in Sanskrit. The word Brahman in Upanishads, the word Anantam, limitless in Upanishads, the word Purnam in the Upanishads, the word Bhuma, the vast in the Upanishads, they all have the same meaning. just limitless, infinite. And final, last thing, that Satchidananda, that Brahma, that Bhuma, that Purna, that Anantam, the grand conclusion of the Upanishad says, what is it? It is you, Tattvamasi. You are that. And if you realize that, as the Kena Upanishad said, going back to that, Pretyasmad lokal amrita bhavanti. The one, they enlightened ones, they attain to immortality. They conquer death, they conquer limitation, they conquer suffering when they realize who I am. Enough to chew on? Om Shanti 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 Hari Om Tat Sat Sri Ram Krishna. Good, you have been a wonderful audience. Thank you so much. Questions? Questions? Yes. Yes, we'll go like this. Tell us your name. Just stand up and tell us your name. Is there a microphone? Oh, there's a microphone. Also, I wanted to thank our volunteers. There's a group of students who have PG and UG students who have volunteered to help with this program. Yes, tell us your name, what you do, and ask the question.
I am Vidushi Pandey, research scholar.
Research scholar in?
Philosophy.
Oh, wonderful. It's your subject. I was talking about your subject.
Sir, I have only doubt how this idea and feelings, when you are talking about the like difference between matter and consciousness, how this idea and feelings are come in the category of matter?
Yes. Good question. Generally, especially in Western philosophy, you're right. In Western philosophy, Western psychology and consciousness studies today, this distinction between mind and consciousness is not understood. I've been trying to hammer it in. Oh, ऐसे देखते रहते हैं कि क्या बोल रहा है. So, it is very clear. I'll tell you the analytical knife which you can use to separate mind, emotions, feelings, thoughts from consciousness. Whatever in our own experience, there's a word phenomenology, how it feels internally. In our own experience, whatever you can label as this. Whatever is an object to you, an object to consciousness, is not consciousness. Therefore, body is not consciousness because it is matter. I can experience it, I can see it, taste it, smell it, touch it. All five senses can objectify the body. But mind also. When we internally look, we can experience the mind, the thoughts, the feelings. When I'm miserable, I feel miserable. So the feeling is an object which we can, there's an English word, introspection. When we look inside, we are aware of our thoughts. We are aware of our memories, our desires, our pain, our pleasure. These are all first person experiences. So the contents of our experience are objects, like this object. Except that these objects are public. They are shared. You see it, I see it. The contents of the mind are first person. But nevertheless, they are all objects because they are experienced. So by this criterion. Whereas in the Western model, that which is public is material, that which is internal first person is subject. But where we take a further analysis, if you can label it as this object, in Sanskrit idam, then it becomes an object and you are the subject. That professor I mentioned, Arindam Chakravarti, he has a nice way of playing with words. He said, what is an object? Anything that objects to your consciousness is an object. So think of consciousness as a field spreading out. And suddenly, field encounters shape, color, sound, touch, taste. So these are all objecting to your consciousness. And what happens when your consciousness meets object? Experience happens. Consciousness plus object is equal to experience. Check it out in your own experience. Like take a look. That's what's happening in our lives. Good question. The lady there. You have to be aggressive about that. You have to attract the attention of the volunteers. Yes. Yes.
Very good evening, sir. I am an MTech AI student.
AI?
Yes, sir.
Oh, AI is everywhere in the world now. But more so in India. Everybody, they're now telling me we're introducing AI in class 6. Okay, please go ahead.
So you told that consciousness means when we realize that, then we will conquer death and all those things.
Yes.
So how an enlightened being actually realizes that he is realized?
Yeah. You have no doubt at all. When you see, what is realization in Advaita Vedanta? Because realization and enlightenment in different systems is different. But in Advaita Vedanta, the precise form of realization is Aham Brahmasmi iti jnanam, that I realize I am this limitless consciousness. So that will become an irrefutable experience. See, right now I have an experience. I feel I am this body. And if you ask me, why do you feel that? Because I feel it. It is my experience. That is how I live. Now, even more than this, even more direct than this, the realization that I am limitless consciousness will become so clear. Suppose you doubt it. If there is any doubt, you're still not enlightened. But you might say, how can there be no doubt at all? I'll give you a technical reason or philosophical reason why there can be no doubt if you're enlightened. Because all doubts are also objects illumined by that consciousness. Shankaracharya says, Ya eva tasya nirakarta tasyaiva atmasa. Whoever denies this pure consciousness or whatever you call it, it is the Atman, is the self of that one. You are the one denying. The one who is denying it is the self of that one only. It is by consciousness itself that the doubt is revealed. The doubt cannot affect the consciousness. The doubt and the solution both will appear and disappear in that consciousness. In fact, in the very act of doubting, it's like saying, I doubt if I can speak, if I speak it. By my speaking itself, I have contradicted it. It will be like that. I'm giving you an example why, and this is a logical answer, but then psychologically you will also see there can be no doubt in this. The Mundaka Upanishad says, what happens upon enlightenment? Vidyate hridaya granthi chidyante sarva samshaya shiyante chasya karmani tasmin drishte paravare. Vidyate hridaya granthi, the knot of confusion is broken. That which tied us to this body mind, that knot of ignorance has been snapped. Then chidyante sarva samshaya, all kinds of doubts are cut asunder, are destroyed. That means there can be no doubt. It's like looking at the sun and you realize no matter anybody says there is no sun, you know there it is. It's just impossible to doubt it. And then all your karmas are destroyed so that you will be freed from the cycle of birth and death. So this is if you see that consciousness as it is, as pure consciousness, means you can never objectify it. You know you are that. And also in all beings as the same reality shining in all form, as matter. So the distinction between matter and consciousness is also erased. So anyway, it will be beyond doubt. Another example about doubt. This Hindi everybody understands? This I heard from a sadhu, Uttarakhand. The difference between reading about milk and seeing milk. So somebody had read milk is white. And then he met a scholar who said, milk is white. Oh, I read milk is white. He said, no, milk is white, you are right. Only when the cow is white. But cow is brown, milk will be brown. Cow is black, milk will be black. Now this person thought that's very logical. Maybe I read an outdated textbook. It's very logical. Brown cow, brown milk, black cow, black milk. Yahi theek hoga. In Hindi he said. But the person who has seen milk, no matter how much logic you give in, black cow, green cow, red cow, white cow, he will know whatever the color of the cow, doodh sadha hi hota hai. So he will know this. Now the enlightened one is like that. There's a difference between grasping it and understanding it, reading a book, listening to a few lectures, and then you can get confused again if you meet another person who's smarter than me, who will convince me just the other way around. I had such an experience recently. My position is AI cannot be your subject. AI cannot be conscious. That's my position for some reasons in Advaita Vedanta. Then I met this guy who is the head of Google's Gemini AI. His name is Blaze something. We had a long fight. But all the arguments I generally give everywhere that AI cannot be conscious, I put one after another to him, he cut it down just like that. That's the good thing of meeting smart persons. They can shake your entire worldview. That's good. And then he gave me a series of arguments to show why AI can be conscious, and he says, he asked me, explain your Advaita to me. I explained. In 15 minutes, smart guy, he got it just like that. And then he says, your Advaita makes it more probable than materialism, that AI can be conscious. And he showed me step by step how it can be done. Then the two of us, we wrote a paper. I can give you the paper. AI, Advaita Vedanta, quantum theory and AI. 3 worldviews on consciousness. They wrote it. I mean, he and another scientist, quantum theorist, they wrote it. I just provided the references from Upanishads and Gita. So I'm not a technical person, so I really don't understand. But very interesting. So you can be convinced of something, and then you run up against somebody smarter and they will convince you of just the opposite. Then I took it to another scientist and philosopher, Bernardo Castro. Have you heard of Bernardo Castro, somebody? No. So he was very furious. He says, don't listen to them. He says, the amount of stupidity that you can have when you have a PhD in consciousness studies is astonishing. The moment you get a PhD, he said, the moment you get a PhD, your stupidity about consciousness reaches astonishing levels. So don't listen to them, Swami. They are trapping you in a network of concepts and ideas. Don't listen to them. So,
Thank you, sir.
then, on that side, one lady was there. Tell us your name and ask the question.
Good evening, sir. I'm Tanushree. I'm a research scholar in philosophy.
Oh, good.
So yeah,
It's my favorite subject.
So yeah, it's a very great opportunity from you. So, sir, in your discussion, you mentioned the point that while reading any Upanishad, it is usually good to not run a rush and stay with the question.
Yes.
So, I was just thinking that prima facie, when we try to understand to stay with the question or let it stay with you, so it is about meditating on the question.
Yes.
But it is also the case that in order to not get derailed, one always needs a skilled person in which we technically call the guru,
Yes.
which is also not possible.
Yes.
So, is there any possibility of how pre-initiated individual, initiated by which I mean Diksha, an individual who can stay with this question?
Yeah. One way of staying with the question, see, there are 2 ways. One is those genuine philosophers who are few in number. You know the difference between genuine philosopher and academic. I'm afraid to say this because you're all academic philosophers, but I'm sure you're genuine philosophers also. Arthur Schopenhauer, the great German philosopher, he says the distinction between a genuine philosopher and an academic philosopher. He says a genuine philosopher is puzzled by life, and an academic philosopher is puzzled by his books. But there he means, of course, not that academic philosophers cannot be genuine philosophers. You have to be genuine. You have to not only look at your books, but also go to the issues behind the books, where these books have come from confronting life. So one way of following up on these questions is you think for yourself and supplement it with your studies. These philosophers have said this. This is my question. Now when I had my question, then I go to what did Kant say about it? What did Berkeley say about it? What did Shankara say about this? Kumari Lavhatta say about this? What did the Vijnanavadi Buddhas say about this? And I'll be excited because it is my question. So this is one way of enriching your answer to the question. The great minds of the past 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 years have given various of what are the arguments? What appeals to me? What does not appeal to me? Why this one appeals? How is my position changing as I read from author to author to author? And how is my own thinking changing? So combine both. You follow what I'm saying? My direct confrontation with life. I must think for myself. But thinking for myself in a vacuum is very poor, as you said, without guidance. So one guidance is the great minds of the past. You are lucky because you have the key to it, philosophy. Philosophy both East and West. The second thing I would advise here, because you asked a spiritual question. So have your own spiritual tradition, whichever you are part of, some lineage. There are so many spiritual traditions in India, in Hinduism. You follow that. Let that be your home tradition, your personal thing. But you can combine it with philosophy. Because you are a philosopher and take that seriously also. I know, I mentioned Arindam Chakra, I mentioned him too many times, but I mentioned it because I went to his class in Ashoka University recently. So, he is actually a committed Vaishnava. And he is trained in Nyaya philosophy. And then, of course, in Oxford, he was a student of Sir Peter Strawson, Bimal Krishna Mathilan and others. Now, being a committed Vaishnava and a Nayayika, yet he is open to the philosophies of the world. He's happily moving between Advaita and Wittgenstein, between Strawson and Sankhya. He's happily moving. He's writing textbook on Buddhist philosophy. So this is the greatness of Indian philosophy and Indian philosophers. And you too must be like that. Want me to summarize? Two things. One, you asked about guide. So use the great minds of the past as your guide. Two, have your own one personal inner path which you must hold on to. Otherwise you will feel lost sometimes. Yes.
Thank you, sir.
Yes.
Namaskar. I'm Devi Prasad Dogra. I'm from computer science department. Unfortunately, I am the head of computer science and AI.
Yes.
So I do not want to be that part. I'm fortunate because I also studied from Kamaputra Krishna Mission. So my doubt is it because we do not understand what is infinite? That's why we struggle to understand consciousness.
Short answer, I think yes. You're basically saying what, in other words, what Roger Penrose himself is saying, that the two problems of the physics and consciousness may be connected. Somebody told me in India itself, all this AI talk, you know what is AI? AI is Advaitic intelligence, not artificial intelligence. Alright, please say. I'll give just 2 pointers about it, just 2 insights about it. One is the criticism of Sankhya by Swami Vivekananda. Criticism of Sankhya by Vedanta by Swami Vivekananda. And the second one is the conception of infinite in Vedanta. So let's start with the conception of infinite in Vedanta. What do you mean by infinite? I was looking for a blackboard, but they're all covered. It's okay.
Blackboard is there. The whiteboard is there.
Yeah, but you have to lift.
If you can.
No, it's all right. Let it be. Let it be. It's okay. I just tell you. It's very simple actually. Anantam, the Sanskrit word Anantam. Anta in Sanskrit means limit, end. And Anta is of 3 types in Vedanta. Anta, limit. Desha, Kala, Vastu. Space, time and object. Space, time and object. What do you mean by space limitation? Space limitation means every object is located somewhere. It's physical objects. I am located here, I am not there. You are located there, you are not there. At that time they did not understand non-locality, or maybe they understood in another way, we don't know today. So we are located. If I am here, I cannot be there. If you are there, you cannot be here. If I am in Bhubaneswar, I can't be in Delhi. This is space limitation. Everything has a beginning and an end in space. Bhubaneswar has a beginning and end in space. Odisha has a beginning and end in space. India, then the earth, so on. This is space limitation. Now if something does not have ananta, no anta, no desha paricheda, no limitation in space, what does it mean? It is everywhere. In other words, in Sanskrit, vyapakam, sarvavyapi, or in English, omnipresent. If there is something which has no space limitation, suppose if something is there which has no space limitation, then it will be everywhere. There cannot be any space where it is not. Second, time limitation. Time limitation, everything has a beginning and end. Even this talk will have an end soon. So everything has a beginning and an end, a birth and a death, a creation and a destruction. So there is a time when it was not existing, and there will be a time when it will not exist, and there will be a time in between when it does exist. This is called time limitation, beginning and end. In Nyaya, those who have studied Indian philosophy, lot of discussions are there. Praga bhava, dhvangsa bhava, abhava, absence, different kinds of absence. So, this is called time limitation. But some ananta, no time limitation. If something does not have a time limitation, what will happen? Eternal, yes, eternal. It will have no beginning and no end. There will never be a time when it did not exist. There will never be a time when it will not exist. It will always be there. So it becomes eternal. In Sanskrit, nitya. The last one is very interesting, object limitation. In Sanskrit, vastu paricheda. Object limitation means if a thing is what it is and different from everything else. Let's put it this way. This is in Aristotelian logic, the law of identity. If A is A, it's different from all not A by definition. So this clock is a clock, but it's not a mic. The mic is a mic, but it's not a clock or a pointer. So each object is itself identical to itself and distinct from everything else. Now Vedanta in Indian philosophy, this is seen as a limitation.